My dad borrowed my sunglasses today. When he returned them, he told me I love these dang things. Girls can't even tell if you're staring at their tea. What's the funniest thing your parents have ever said? My dad at the doctor. Doctor, have you been experiencing any loss of memory? Dad, am I really the person to ask? Doctor, point taken. Any sudden loss of consciousness? Dad, I don't remember. After arguing with my grandmother about some ridiculous stuff, I vented long and angrily to my dad, who simply replied, "Now you know why your grandfather is dead," and turned and walked out of the room. That's 3 generations of men. My parents have a baby picture of my sister that had been hanging in their room for as long as I can remember. One day I made a comment about it, something about how it doesn't really look like my older sister. My dad then says, "That is because it isn't. That is the sample picture that came with the frame." When I asked him why he had a fake photo hanging in his room, he says, "Son, your sister had a condition as a baby. She was very ugly. This baby on the other hand is very adorable." I hope this is real. My maternal grandma, in a moment befitting the almost politically correct redneck meme, said to me, "I support the gays. They should be able to get married. But lesbians? I don't get it. There's no dong. TLDR. My nan loves the dong." If ever there was a TLDR to force readership of the whole paragraph, this is it. My mom is sort of a prude, yet she loves Eminem, T.I., and Jay-Z. One day she said, if I could make it as a white, middle-aged woman rapper, I would. Oh, she could. I was riding down an old curvy road in my dad's pickup, just bouncing along over all the potholes and places where the surrounding tree roots had lifted the road, when a dead raccoon appeared in the road ahead. Up until this point, we hadn't been talking. My dad suddenly slows down and pulls right up next to the carcass, rolls down his window, leans out to look at it and says, "Hey buddy, you okay?" before speeding off again. Comedy gold to my then 13-year-old self. My house phone rings and my father picks up. Apparently it's a dance company telemarketer that has been calling us for days. All he says is we are a family of paraplegics butthole. I was in hysterics. My dad answers 800 numbers with crap like Seamus O'Grady's Unicorn Farm and such. One day, the same number called twice. He picks up the phone and keeps repeating, "Hello, I like apples." It was hysterical. My dad was talking to my brother about a waitress at a restaurant. "Hey, I think she was hitting on you." "Nah. Are you still dating that one girl?" "No, we broke up." "Man, you could have had 2 girlfriends. You messed up." This sounds like something my dad would say. For some reason, out of nowhere, my dad told me girls don't mind going through the bush to get to the berries. I still don't know why that comment got said. You were probably getting your pube trimmings all over the bathroom and he wanted you to stop. Went to the bathroom when we got to a restaurant with my dad. I went in first, so I picked the adult urinal, while he got the only other one, the short kiddie one. Me. Haha, you got the short urinal. Dad, yeah, well that's cause I need it. Didn't get it at first, but it's scarred me ever since. Not my parent, but my friend's family was eating at Taco Bell, and his mom got the volcano box. She couldn't finish it, and if you remember, the volcano taco had the red shells. His dad picks it up, takes a bite, and says, "Look kids, I'm eating your mom's pink taco." They all looked horrified, and he couldn't stop laughing. When I was 10, my dad and I were driving home from the beach and I only was wearing a towel. He looked over, noticed I wasn't wearing a seatbelt and yelled at me to put it on. There were no cars around at the time and I felt it wasn't necessary, and then I asked him why I had to. He replied, "Because I don't want to have to explain to the cops why a little naked Asian boy flew out my windshield if we crash." That was how I read it to begin with. So how do I get some of those titty pics from the computer? I'm tired of paying $6 for a penthouse just to see some goddamn titties. I once brought a girl home. We went upstairs for a second and came straight back down. My mother turns around and says, "Just like his father." Done. Me in the kitchen. Mom doing dishes and dad ready the newspaper. My mom turns to me and says, "Mom, you know, you have really grown up into a very handsome man." My dad, without looking up from the paper, says, "Dad, oh honey, don't lie to the boy. I feel bad for you, Eric Foreman." My dad, "Do you shave your man area?" Me, "Well yay, this isn't the 70s dad, no one likes the bush." 2 days later, my mom, "What does shaving your pubes do as a guy? Does it make blowjays better?" I was mortified. Nobody likes picking hairs out of their meal. Not something my parents said, but my grandfather, "I can't smoke grass. That crap hurts my lungs. But what's good is marijuana tea. That tastes like just herbal tea. Poker night is so much more fun now." My father was talking and moving in his sleep, so I started talking back to him. He responded vocally and did motions. So then I decided to try singing. I sang a line of Twist and Shout and he sang the next, and we went through the whole song, him in his sleep. He was also dancing, while laying down, the entire time. My dad once picked up a potato and looked at it for a moment before saying in the most deadpan voice, "You know, from a certain angle, every potato looks like Richard Nixon." Pretty sure he was stoned, though. 1970s, riding with my dad in his Triumph convertible through campus of local university, WVU, stopped at red light. Campus tour next to us be given by cute girl. She notices us, only 5 feet away, and says hi. Dad responds, "Wow, you look different with your clothes on." Light turns green and we speed off. As a girl who gives campus tours, I'm just not sure if there is even a way to recover from this one. More embarrassing than funny, I was at my mum's house and my boyfriend was over. It was probably the second time they had met. We're just chatting when my boyfriend yawns and my mum says, "Well Monobrous, looks like you'll be on top tonight." Sorry, I am inclined to disagree. That is hilarious. At a hotel, me, Dad, "Those kids in the hot tub won't get out, and they've been in there for like an hour." Dad, gets out of pool, goes over to hot tub, gets in. Kids, Dad, "How are you doing?" Kids, scatter. I have 2 things my dad has said to me. I was talking to my dad and told him the story of how my mom had my stepdad give me the sex talk when they found out my girlfriend, now my wife, were getting serious. He, my stepdad, gave me the talk while my mom sat on the couch next to him with her hands over her ears and told me how he and my mom practiced safe sex. I relayed the story to my dad and said I wanted to tell him, "Gee, thanks for that. Is there anything else you want to tell me? Like, does my mom swallow?" And my dad quietly said, "Number." And more recently, I told my dad that even though I love my stepmother to death, I've often wondered how my life would have been different had he and my mom not divorced. My dad said, "Well, you still would have been raised alone by your mother, since I would have shot myself." Dude. It was about a month after one of my good friends from college got his first girlfriend, and said friend was over at my house for Thanksgiving. He lives halfway across the country and traveling home wasn't feasible. As the 3 of us were sitting around watching football, my dad looks over and tells my friends, "Never buy a woman jewelry unless you're going to get oral sex for it." Totally straight face and immediately went back to the game afterwards. Now think of all the jewelry your mom has. We have an industrial fan at our house for the summer. One day last year my dad says, "Let me get the other fan. It will blow harder." I replied with, "That's what she said." He came back with, "Not if she's doing the blowing." I was thinking you had a 9-inch nails fan staying over or something. Me and my brain. When I got my first girlfriend, my friend told my dad that I had one, so he asked what's her name, so I told him and he was just like, "Okay." Later that day, he comes into my room with a handful of condoms, hands them to me and says, "If you're my son, you'll need these to make me proud." Then walks out and we never speak a word of this again. My dad was trying random letter combinations on words with friends and ended up with chodes. Not knowing what it meant, my brother stepped in and instructed him in what my dad now thinks are common usages of the word chodes. Knowing this, I was a little less surprised when I heard my dad, the church elder, yell, "James, get all those chodes out of your mouth and help me with the yard work." Chodomouth, what a heinous villain that'd be. I remember one day my dad, who was 76 at the time, asked me what Twitter was after hearing it on the news. I told him something like, well, it's this website where you go and you say something that's on your mind or what you're doing at that moment. He looked at me blankly for about 3 seconds processing what I told him and then shouted out, WHO gives a crap. My dad walked out of the bathroom once and said it happened again, and I asked him what had happened and he said, my magical butthole put the corn back together. Not as clever and amazing, but sums up my father pretty much. After exiting the bathroom, he sprays air freshener in an X across the doorway and says, them sewage workers are going to be working overtime tonight, boys. Usually is said after we eat Indian food. Just thought of another one. Me and my girlfriend and her father went to IKEA to get some kitchen stuff. Her dad isn't very happy to be there and neither am I. It takes forever to walk through those dang stores even if you only want one thing. So basically my girlfriend is running around looking at stuff and her father and I was carrying everything. When we're almost at the exit, an infant is sitting in his stroller screaming his head off. The mother is standing a few feet away, so he leans into the baby and says, I know how you feel. Then he just kept on walking. The mother looked really confused. I could barely keep myself from bursting into laughter. One time my mother told my dad, I clean the house and cook you guys food. What would you do without me? My dad responded, tell myself I need to get a wife. My mom, imagine in a broken English accent by a cute little Asian woman, I have to wash my underwear before I throw them away so some pervert doesn't dig them out of the trash and sniff them. Tell her she can make some serious money that way. Mom, oh, so what did you and boyfriend do today? Me, not much. We just had dinner at a tapas bar. Mom, that's nice. But what were you doing at a topless bar? My dad is currently working on commercial space platforms, but his background in structural analysis is civil engineering, specifically nuclear power plants. He is very smart. Anyway, we went to see the local opening of a play Copenhagen about the meeting between Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg and how it affected the development of the nuclear arms race. For the opening, there was a panel of various nuke types, and you can imagine the audience. The head of the panel said that in order to ease things along, people could hand him the questions and he'd relay them to the panel. My dad piped up, so you're going to be a moderator? I have never seen so many smart people lose it. I kept on thinking it was a joke about censorship. Didn't get it. Started scrolling down. Immediately had to scroll up. Oh, he meant moderators in nuclear power plants. My dad once told me the story of his only hickey. He said when he was about 14, some girl gave him a hickey, and when he got home later that night, he was so nervous about his mother seeing it, he pulled down his collar and said, this is not what you think it is, and just walked away. She never mentioned it after. I was in school when my father walked in the front gate where we wait almost like a rec area. Well, I have a habit of messing around with my dad saying, what's up bro? He with his thick Spanish accent looking down at his phone, texting, not looking up, says what's up my, and my eye went wide open, not for the fact that all my friends heard that, cause it was the first time he ever said that in front of them. It was that I went to a Christian school and the pastor was sitting there with his daughter. This is where my dad lifted his head up because I dropped to the floor in laughter and all of my friends red as tomatoes, clapping and hooting. Because once he lifted his head and looked into the pastor's eyes, his first reaction was to say oh crap, where he just awestruck by the situation. He gave a firm handshake to the pastor saying, sorry, I didn't know you were here. Where the pastor said, don't worry, I grew up in the ghetto half of my life. I let those words fly when I was young. Both of them are white. My dad on Vicodin after surgery to correct his second retinal detachment of the year when I was in high school. Vesta dear, when you're in college, bring your girlfriends home. My dad is a cradle robber. Also, now that I am in college, I have made exactly one friend, and it was a dude. My dad was at the optometrist a long time ago. A 6 came on one of the lines, and when the doctor asked him to read it, he replied upside down 9. Before leaving for prom with my girlfriend in the car, my dad told me to remember that a stiff dong has no conscience. Golden advice, dad, and it's stuck with me ever since. I was playing Family Feud on my iPad with my dad and the question was name something that comes in 2. He replied immediately, titties. It wasn't there. I was telling my dad as he was going into surgery to get his prostate taken out. Dad, you got a permanent marker. Me, no. Why? Dad, I wanted to write not sex change patient on my chest. You can never be too sure. Me, bahahaha. Dad's smarter than you give him credit for. Crap like that can happen. Used to work for a healthcare facility to remain nameless. Saw a bunch of reports of people getting the wrong arm leg amputated. Tagging yourself with a Sharpie before surgery is not the worst idea in the world. Well, my gran comes out with some proper pre-1950s racism sometimes. Whilst driving to my granddad's funeral with my parents, brothers, and partners, we happened to drive past two black people. She looked at them, gave out a classic old lady look at them too, they're black enough to pee ink. I actually saw the guy driving the hearse shaking, trying not to laugh. We were at a monster truck event where my dad proved once again he can fall asleep anywhere like a freaking champion. As the drivers of the trucks walked out to stand in a line and be introduced to the crowd, the voice of the announcer caused my dad to snuffle awake momentarily, look around, and say the athletes, before instantly falling back asleep. Sunday. Not my parent, but I was hanging out with my friend when her mom said, "Sid, don't ever date a black guy. Your mouth is too small for that." My dad was once asked, "What do you think Kurt Cobain would be doing if he was alive today?" Without skipping a beat he replied, "Probably screaming and banging the coffin." On meeting the dumbest girl I ever dated, my mom said, "I really hope she gives good head or you're going to be bored with her in a day." If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.